So here we are, starting on our favorite subject lately, stagflation, and what to do about it. So inflation continues to roar. Um, we now officially are in a recession. There's 2 quarters of GDP decline. That's a recession. I was watching Janet Yellen on Meet the Press a couple Sundays ago, and she tried to say it's not because of hiring. Well, we're going to get to hiring and what the issues are going on with hiring. The Costco CEO says we're already in a recession. He said this a couple of weeks ago, that this is what their business is experiencing as they look at their consumers. Inflation for the month of June was 9.1%. I've got a slide on that. I think you'll find it really interesting. The real numbers are significantly higher. And for portions of the population, as what the Costco CEO talks about, they're experiencing some really large increases that when you blend it out with the overall population is not seeing it. But when you have a third of the population have these huge increases, it's a big problem to everybody's business because they're going to be able to buy less. The price of gas, this is interesting, has dropped every day for the last 50 days. That's both a good sign and a frightening sign because it means that there's less consumption because there's less demand. And that affects all of our businesses and all of our revenue. And oil, because we're not doing anything domestically, is still controlled by the cartel. And you know their number one objective is to get the most they can get for it, which they've been doing pretty well at. The rent increases were less in June, but if you do the math, the 35% of people who rent had a 16% increase in June. That's still pretty significant, pretty big budget busting stuff. So here's what from the paper, what Costco CEO said. A lot of people are experiencing recession right now and just trying to survive. Well, I think everybody's kind of feeling that. And although people are doing okay financially, like he says at the bottom, people with less discretionary spending are having a difficult time in the current economy. And that's what we're seeing. A very large portion of the population is taking it hard, and it's only a matter of time before it affects the rest of us. So here's the June inflation number. And I think you'll find it really interesting. If you do the math, almost to the bottom, the last one they said shelter, which means your apartment or your home, increased 5.6%. But if you do the math on that, the 35%, because I'm assuming those of us who own our own home and are on fixed rates mortgages, which are most of us, we're not having any increase in shelter. But the 35% of the people that rent are, and if they're generating, that means the 35% had a 16% increase in rent as leases came up and they had to release the new prices 16% higher. As that's probably our largest embedded number, that as we continue to go forward, as that 35% of the population experiences their lease coming due and having to pay the new number, we're going to see our business restrict more and more as more money goes into shelter and goes into less items. It seems like gasoline is kind of leveling off for now, but all we need is a big shock for that thing to go back up to $125 a barrel and $7 a gallon in places like California. In fact, I believe California even hit over $8 a gallon for a very brief time there. So that's a very sensitive number. So, but this is what it looks like, where they were saying household energy. Now, this is another interesting thing, went up 21%. So what's happening is the utilities are having to pay these higher prices for natural gas and oil, and I guess to a lesser extent, coal. And the problem is without a cohesive or a, shall I say, competent energy policy, renewable energy, unless it's the solar panel on your home, is extremely expensive. Maryland last year, from some kind of legislative mandate, built the wind power out on the Chesapeake Bay, and that's at 73 cents a kilowatt hour. That's more than 3 times what people are paying. In fact, it's actually almost 4 times what people are paying now. In some more rural areas that are lower cost areas, it's 8 times what people are paying for electricity. So the conversion to green could be extremely expensive and a major factor in inflation. just like household energy went up 21.9% in the month of June. That's probably embedded and is probably going to climb as the purchase contracts for fuel by the utilities expire and they go into the new marketplace at the new higher price, just like with rents. These things are embedded. If you remember from some of my previous posts, it took 9 years to cure inflation the last time the beast was let out of the box. And we have the same components occurring now, and will probably take a long time to control them again to where we're not having this embedded inflation and constantly having businesses increase their prices just to meet these embedded cost increases.